morning, everybody. Welcome to City Life. Linda Bown, I'm going to be your host this morning. I have our town manager in Tyngsborough, Colin Loiselle.
Good morning.
And, of course, our best representative in Massachusetts, Colleen Garry.
Best state rep that ever lived.
Oh, thank you.
It's very cold out, folks. My car didn't start. So,
Yeah.
That
Bad
was a
start.
technical difficulty. Linda had to get.
bad start. Couldn't find my keys.
She rode her bicycle instead.
That's right, with my earmuffs on. So it is very, very cold out.
I started my automatic car starter, and it didn't even feel like it had been on by the time I got
Yeah.
up there, so.
Yeah, I didn't even, anyway, that's a long story, so
Yeah.
why I didn't do that. But now in Tyngsborough, start there.
Yeah,
Congratulations on the celebration of trees, to you, to Allison, to everybody, that
was
was
fabulous.
absolutely, great show in the center of town.
it absolutely was. Thanks to our hardworking volunteers like Rep. Gary, who I think was basically a full-time employee
I
during
enjoyed
the
it.
Festival of Trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
But no,
gets you in the mood.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, it brings people not just from Tyngsborough, from around the state, southern New Hampshire, and it just gets bigger and better every year.
Yeah.
And everybody's in such a good mood. It's rare that you go to an event where everybody
Well.
is happy,
Yeah.
but at this one they are.
Well, everybody needs to be happy. It's
Yes.
sort of been a long time. But in Tyngsborough, I'm going to start with something horrible.
Okay.
Got a bad arbitration judgment. What are you going to do with that? That's a,
Okay, tell the audience a little bit.
okay, we had
Arbitration, I don't know. what
on a
to tell-
police officer that was fired, and he won everything. He got overtime, he got pay, he got, is he coming back?
So the decision was just issued on Monday. There's, labor law in Massachusetts is incredibly complicated.
Yes.
So it's far too premature for me to speculate what will happen. You're right, the arbitrator's decision ruled in favor of the union. Arbitration in Massachusetts is an avenue for particularly public safety unions in the case of discipline, or even in the case of a difference in opinion in the interpretation of a union contract. Part of the law says that you go to binding arbitration, and there are, again, the select board is ultimately the authority that decides how they proceed in terms of their legal options, and they haven't had a chance to meet yet. But generally speaking, arbitration is the decision issued by an independent arbiter, and then the law allows for certain types of appeals based on certain factors. So, again, I'm not speaking about this specific case because it's a personnel matter, but that is, for people that aren't aware, that's what arbitration is. It's
Yes.
when the union and management have a disagreement about whether it's discipline or how you interpret the contract, or sometimes you see arbitration about how the town pays a collective bargaining unit. They may interpret the contract differently, and it's binding mediation essentially.
Yeah.
When did this episode happen?
About 3 minutes ago. I feel bad. I blindside.
No,
I know, it just
was-
happened.
it-
Monday? Yeah.
But the case itself was a couple of years ago, right?
It was 3 years ago,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's not, it just happened in your, it did
It
not
happened
happen
to
in your
land
watch.
during my watch. But the town is still assessing it. I mean, Tyngsborough is not the first community to have
Oh, God,
an
no.
arbitration decision ruled against it, and it is my responsibility and the select board's responsibility to act in accordance with the law and in the town's best financial interest, and that's I expect what we'll do. But I think the ruling came down at 9:30 on Monday morning. So.
Right. I felt bad because it is on you, and you had nothing to do with it. And, it's just and all the communities have it. I mean, everybody has had, is dealing with suits.
Yep.
And for some reason, the municipalities never win. I don't know what's
Well,
wrong with.
because we hire lousy lawyers.
I was being nice.
OJ got off, why? Because he had a good lawyer.
It never would have
Government had a
happened
crappy lawyer.
under the rules, I have to say. I don't think it would
I
have.
don't know who the players are, but
Yeah.
usually the government loses because they have a crappy lawyer.
Yeah, moving aside from the arbitration, on the litigation against municipalities, I mean, people do, and again, I'm not speaking about this arbitration because that's a union labor dispute, not a lawsuit. But when it comes to lawsuits, I mean, I know that there's been comments online about a marijuana company that was supposed to come into town,
Yeah.
never ended up coming to fruition. They're suing the town. Generally speaking, people see government entities like municipalities, and I'm sure it happens on the state level, as an open checkbook.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are some laws that protect the municipality in terms of the damages that you can be awarded, but it is a sad reality. Fortunately, it's not unique to Tyngsborough, and I think.
Oh, absolutely not, but it's a litigious society, you know
Yes.
that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, everybody has a camera in their phone, and everybody has the name of a lawyer in their pocket. So it's pretty common that, and I think that's, I know having worked in a doctor's office, that's a fear that hangs over you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it happens in fact, we had a situation and we won it, and it was so bizarre that they gave us costs and everything. So it was, and I was a nervous wreck, because you know Bown was a loose cannon. When they said, "Oh, we're going to put him on the and testify," I said, "Oh my God, I don't think so." No. So anyway, so it's going to be a difficult thing, and I don't know whether he's coming back and I'm hoping that the whole thing is in the past with Tyngsborough. I think, and I've said this all along, that I love my new manager. I love our superintendent of schools. I think we're on the road to a new time in Tyngsborough.
Yep.
And so I just want to say that to you.
Appreciate that.
Oh, Colin's done a great job, and
Oh.
we go way back.
You do?
And you know, he actually interned in my office one semester.
Oh, my
and,
goodness. I didn't know that.
Yeah, after he interned
A
with the
young
governor,
Colin.
even I got after the governor's.
A young
internship.
Colin.
Yes, and
Well, I still think you're about 12.
yeah.
That's what John called me earlier, so I'll take it. I'll take 12.
Yeah.
Any
it's-
day.
Wow. It's, you know. You
But I think the best thing is he's the uncle to this beautiful little girl. Oh my
Yes.
God, she's gorgeous. I see your grandmother's posting on Facebook all the time.
Oh, yeah,
and
my
she's got
family's
that
obsessed with her.
beautiful little one. Yeah.
I used to be the star of the family, but then
Yeah.
that got kind of knocked down. But
You're
it's-
gone, yep.
It's fine, yeah.
So you just have to be the star at Tyngsborough. Colin.
Exactly,
Do,
right.
do the very best you can. So what else? What is happening now? Let's
Yeah.
talk about something.
On a much more brighter news, we just started the budget process. The picture in Tyngsborough is a lot better. Well, I should be careful, because in about a month, I'm going to be begging Colleen and Senator Kennedy for more money. So the picture is tough in Tyngsborough. No, but I met last night with the Finance Committee, and a week ago with the Select Board. We talked about the budget for next fiscal year. Tyngsborough has an incredibly conservative approach to our budgeting. If you, and Linda knows this, and Rep. Gary knows this, if you walk through Town Hall, there's no fat that can be trimmed. We have departments that are one person, some of them are half person, some of them are one and a half. So it makes the budgeting process easier, because we're not scrambling to fill, you know, a lot of people use the one-time COVID money to hire positions, and that money's now gone away. So the picture financially is good. This is the first year of the full impact of the middle school debt. It's about $2.9 million. That was approved as a debt exclusion. But of course, the town committed $1 million from the operating budget to reduce the borrowing that residents will have to pay for. So on the residents' tax bill, you'll only see $1.9 million, which is slightly higher than what was on your tax bill last year for the excluded debt piece. But the school is on, it's on track to be completed this spring. There's a school building committee meeting tonight to finalize the move-in schedule, and students will start in the new middle school this fall. So
So we have no overrides
No overrides.
associated to it or anything. Oh,
no overrides.
good.
Yeah, no, we're,
Good committee there. They met like every week. They were amazing.
Yeah, I do want to say that we just lost two folks from Tyngsborough. Ron Russell.
Yes.
Didn't technically live in Tyngsborough right now, but the
Very
fire
involved.
chief's dad and one of the founders of the American Legion in Tyngsborough. What a wonderful guy. I had the opportunity to sit with him and the chief and Pam at Veterans Day, and we just chit-chatted away, and then Linda Geyer from the Finance Committee.
who was instrumental in bringing CPC to Tyngsborough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many years ago.
So sad. I mean, when you see these people who have made an impact on the community
Oh,
and
yeah.
they pass, it's we extend our sympathies to their families, and they will always be remembered fondly.
Ron was a big active member in the Sportsman's Club, and he always sat at our table, and I always used to kid about it, because we're sort of the old Dick Choate and
Yep,
you know, Davy Coles, and he was 94,
Incredible.
and he got hit by a truck
Yeah.
getting his mail, which is so sad. But you know, he would drive himself down every 2 weeks to the Sportsman's Club.
good for
He was
him.
amazing, you
Yeah.
know. So he was very, and that's the way to go. You know, you want to. Can you imagine being that active at
And he had written a story about how he met his wife and Blanche, and at the funeral, the pastor was talking about that and how much he wanted to be back with her.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so, I mean, he moved on, but you could tell they were a pair
Oh, yeah.
together.
Yep.
And she was very active
Yep.
in the Legion as well.
Yep.
She was in the auxiliary, so
Yeah.
it was quite.
And the new Legion is beautiful.
Yes.
I got to see that on Veterans Day, and wow, what a job they did on
Yeah,
that.
they're
And,
very active.
yeah.
So, I have a question for both. I'm glad both of you are here because I'm on conservation. I had a meeting last night, and I've been thinking lately, and someone put it in my ears, as a matter of fact, about when Alan Sherman died, his daughter, that the Sherman property, which is we have as a trust, the building is kind of falling into disarray, and so I asked Pammy, our secretary, and she said originally there was $10,000 appropriated for the building every year, and as other things, things get tight, it went by the roadside, I think. So what do we get a grant? What can we? Because it's a beautiful piece of property, and it's the fact that everybody in town. My parents' mortgage, they couldn't have built their house. They didn't have mortgages without Max Sherman, and that's anybody of the old townies. He just pretty much financed everybody.
Wow.
They built their houses room by room by room.
Wow.
And so there's a big history of Max and his wife, and she taught me. I became a lifeguard. Certified with her, so she worked at the Y, and a lot of history, and the whole family.
Yep.
The whole Sherman family. That's a beautiful, beautiful piece of land. But the house,
Yeah.
and I know there are issues, so what,
Yeah, the house. So we did find Emily, our not new anymore. She's been here for 2 years now, and she's fantastic.
She's the best.
Our conservation director. Her and I looked when I first returned as town manager last September at all of the transmittal paperwork, the deed, the paperwork we got when we took ownership, and there was contemplation about budgeting $10,000 to maintain the building. Of course, nowadays $10,000 won't get you
No.
anything. One of the things, and so we know, like one of
Weather
the big
stripping.
exactly, maybe one of the things that is the biggest issue there is the roof. The roof needs to
Yeah.
be replaced. Unfortunately, the building hasn't been used for anything really at all over the last 5 or 6 years, and so at the same time that we're looking at needing to spend, $450,000 just to keep our police station operational, it was tough for me or for the select board to go to capital asset and say, hey, listen, we need $300,000 for a roof on a building that has no use. So what we've done over the last few months is talk to groups like the Land Trust, like the Historical Commission, to find a way to say, look, let's use the building, because I can justify all day, maybe it's not 300,000, maybe it's 150, to fix the roof. There's some gutter issues, some of the windows need to be replaced, they're certainly not doing their job, if there's a use for it. And so I think we'll be looking, probably not in fiscal '26 at the capital plan. There are also some, and I'm not totally familiar with all of the requirements, there are some state grants we can get.
well, that's what,
And when all else fails, around budget time, Colleen will reach out and ask what kind of earmarks we need, and I send my laundry
How old
list.
is the
of-
house? Do you know?
oh my God, it's I'm going to say like 150 years old.
Okay.
I mean, it's not as old as my office.
Practically brand new for Tyngsborough.
Yeah.
I mean, we have done very well with Mass Historic has a really great preservation program, which we've gotten almost $100,000 in the last 3 years for the Littlefield Library. That redid the roof, that redid the outside.
Yeah.
It did somewhere. So that's a potential avenue. Again, it's just making sure that we have use. And, I hate to, another conversation that will be exciting is the future of the Winslow School. That's a conversation that will come up soon, I expect. I know the Historical Commission.
Right, and I'm sure they'll probably be happy. See, you run into a real problem with the Sherman House, because that trust is very explicit, and it can't be used for anything
Correct.
except conservation.
Right.
And
really?
I know that at one point they wanted to put some offices in there, and they couldn't. And the trust, they said, oh, well, we'll take it back. So I know that's why I was curious about,
Yeah.
to speak to you about
Yeah.
grants. I think probably that may have to be the avenue.
Glad to help
to-
out in whatever we can. It's funny because, I really got a chance to spend time in the Littlefield Library during the Festival
Yeah.
of Trees.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It is absolutely gorgeous. And people were saying how beautiful it was. And And what do you use it for? And they were like, well, historical has it, but we don't really use it. And we, with the old town hall and now with the church, the meeting house, you sit there and say, okay, well, who could use this, And
Right.
so, and certainly you don't want things damaged in there, but, yeah, it's Tyngsborough is blessed to have these beautiful.
That's where I did all my studying in college. It was
really.
just the most amazing little library. Of course, you almost killed yourself coming in and out off the Daniel Webster Highway, but hey.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, that's something that I really love about our district is that there's so many old historic things. And this year is going to be the 200, well, it goes to next year too, 250th of the American Revolution. And there's a special commission on it, and we're looking at ways of trying to get our communities in it. And I did my tree this year in regards to the Gold Star men who had lost their lives over the years in service. And going back to 1705, I think, was the first one. And Joe English, who was an Indian, Native American, who was helping the white folks as a scout, and he was killed. But it's the history that's there, and the history of, of the men from our district. And the district was different then. Some of the Tyngsborough folks that were listed were actually from Dunstable or from New Hampshire, and really amazing that we were all part of that, And we did the Festival of Trees this year. I mean, the Wreaths Across America in Drake, after we followed Pam Russell and the firefighters out there. And it really is amazing when you go out to the cemeteries, you see some of these old graves of the people, and you can't even read it, but you know that they were military and so forth. So there's a lot of history.
Absolutely.
Especially in our districts. If you look at Drake and Tyngsborough, there's some of the older communities that in the Commonwealth.
And
So-
I'm sure the whole all the men in the Sherman family were veterans, so.
Yeah.
Interesting, I really, and I'm very happy to work with anybody in your office, because I know Emily, we keep Emily pretty busy.
Yes.
She's amazing, so.
Yeah.
And I hope she gets well. She has a flu, so she wasn't in last night, but
Yeah.
maybe there's a grant, or maybe there's some state funds that we can reach out.
definitely love to talk about it.
And
See-
conservation or something, because
Yeah.
it's a beautiful house, and it's a beautiful piece of property, and that's a great walk down there.
Really?
To the brook and everything. It's just great. And I know we get the field, we get money to mow the field and that type of thing. And that was part of the deal. They want all the small life to be able to, and the birds to be able to feed. And Alan there were a couple benches there, and a funny story that when they were putting the beehives at one point, and he always used to sit in the bench there, he said, "I'm not there." No, I don't even like looking at them.
Well, we'll have to go for a walk when it's not so chilly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We'd be holding on to each other, hoping we didn't slip in the ice. That would be an amusing video. So, anyway, so now I've got off my mind what I was concerned, because that came up last night, and I just was curious about
right.
it. Because I've been thinking about it, and I've been on finance and stuff. I couldn't remember. I knew there was something, but I couldn't remember what.
Yeah, it's funny because the first time I heard about this 10,000 was when Emily and I looked at the paperwork last year. The budget has always included some level of money, obviously for the oil, electricity, but I think that the fiscal 25 budget it's like $600. So it's gone down, quite a bit. But I think the roof is the biggest priority. There are some things on the inside our maintenance staff have been able to do, and some work around the windows. Some of the trim was rotting. We were able to replace some. But
Colin,
those
you gotta
bigger
grab
items-
that mic
Oh,
and
sorry
bring it
about that.
4 inches from your mouth.
Some of those bigger items we'll have to look for capital.
Well, maybe the
grants.
vote could help with it.
Yeah,
Didn't even think about that.
they've
It's
been
a
very
good-
helpful.
They are very helpful, and it's that type of a building that would be very interesting and useful to them dealing with older buildings.
Yeah.
My house is over
I'll reach
200
out to
years
Lee.
old, and believe me, it's interesting when you're trying to, they didn't have insulation and things like that
Right.
back then, but I remember seeing, when we were doing some work on it, seeing the different level of nails. And in the attic, it's actually big pegs instead of nails.
It's amazing. My
you
office,
had it, yeah.
was over 300 years old, and they knew how to build them back then. That fireplace was built in the middle of the building. It heated the whole building.
Yeah.
And it was just, so I never worried about flooding. I know we've had, and people would be saying, oh, maybe you better do, no, it's been there a long time. I'm sure it's seen a few floods.
Yeah.
So they did know how to build them. So,
Definitely.
anyway, even
My
without
niece-
inflation.
My niece has a house in Chelmsford, and the roof, when you go up to the attic, it's trees with bark still on them, holding the roof up.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
That
Yeah.
house is old, a beautiful, beautiful home. I just could not get over with that.
Oh, right. When you tape off, I had to take the.
You see bark on the tree in the
yeah.
attic, and wow.
Yeah, the strapping. I had a ceiling issue, leak, and they went down to the strapping, and it was these huge pine planks. So it's just like you say, it's just quite amazing. And you went to, and there was a little pair of baby shoes tucked in.
Oh, wow.
And so the kid that was helping me said, "Can I take them?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead." Well, after he took them, I kept getting this tap, 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 and so I knew the place was haunted. I said to him, I think you better bring the shoes back. It's beginning to be an irritant. He says, "Oh, don't be ridiculous." Well, he worked the weekend alone, and the shoes were back by Monday.
Wow.
He said, "I don't know what I did. Never mind. I don't need them that much."
I have a clawfoot tub, and I had a friend refurbishing it for me. And when I came home, he said to me, "Did your mother pass in this house?" And I said, "No." He said, "Because I was just working, and I saw the extension cord moving, and I turned, and there was an image of a woman in a house coat looking at me." And I said, "Well, actually, my grandmother passed away in the house, and she used to wear house coats
wow.
all the time, and she did all the work around the house over the years.
She was supervising.
Wallpapering, but yeah, I'm like, she's checking out what you're doing." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, these interdimensional beings that they talk about, I in the office, I had a lot of funny incidences, but I would hear patients talking, and they'd come out and they'd say, "That was a lovely man in the waiting room," and there was nobody in the waiting room. I'd say,
Oh,
"Oh, okay, I'm glad they were nice to you."
I'm wondering what they did to do now with the house not being there.
I know. They were over in the Belfry, which used to have a little girl that used to be in the Belfry. I'd be out shoveling snow, and the wispy little girl up in the Belfry. You'd see. Most people, old people, we've seen them at one time or another up there. So it's that, I don't know how that happens. I don't know. I saw Father Sullivan, though, in that building.
Really? Wow.
So after he
T.
passed.
Raymond?
Yes, after he passed. So, it was a very strange time, and it was just a calming, I don't know how long we were there together, but it was a very interesting interview. I had Rita Mercier one day we were in the waiting room. She and John McDonough, and the two of them couldn't believe the noises and so things moving and stuff. So it's I don't know, believe or don't believe, I can't say.
Yep.
I just had a lot of experiences, and other people had
Because
experiences.
you were open to it.
Right.
Right.
Well, I never had any violence, right? The only person, we had an apartment upstairs, and a lot of people stayed up there in transition. Phil O'Brien, when he sold his house before he got reestablished, he was up there. He's the only one that he had a cup thrown at him and a broom, and I figured it was probably Phyllis, his wife.
And then we
because-
got two texts, if you could read them out loud.
Good morning. The people who built in the past had knowledge, pride when it came to the building trade. And most of it was built with hand tools, not power tools. Jay, you're absolutely right. They knew how to do, and they improvised.
Page 2.
Okay. Why is Ron Mariano fighting back against the audit? We voted for this. Maybe the speaker will follow Flaherty, Finneran, and Demasi to federal prison. Well, that's a cheerful thought. Well, okay, Carl.
So, first of all, Flaherty and Finneran did not go to jail. Secondly, the audit, we are audited on financial issues in the House. It's been an outside independent audit. She wants to go into procedures and how chairmen get picked and all of these things that really are political. And and there is a separation of the executive branch versus the legislative branch, and we actually fund her budget. So I can see what we ended up passing when we went back in was to allow her to choose the outside entity, not have it be an employee of hers doing it, but an outside CPA who's already on the state procurement list. And she can choose them, and they'll do it. What she wants to do is a whole lot more. And I like Diana, but the reality is, this is all payback for what happened to her when she was a legislative aide. There was questions about whether she was in the chamber at night with a rep, and nothing happened, as far as I know, but she was the
What
one.
did we vote for, Colleen? What did the Massachusetts voters vote for? When they voted for this
I think they
issue,
voted
what
for
did
an
they vote?
audit, but I think the ultimate thing is that you don't know what's going to happen.
If
If
we voted for an audit, what kind of audit do you think we're going to, or should we be getting?
a financial audit. She talks about the money
And when
that,
should it happen?
well, it is done every year by an outside agency. Now she
she's
can
supposed-
choose it.
Okay. We'll just
We also
change-
don't know what
We'll just change the camera here for a second, okay? Sorry, it's out of focus. If I hire my accountant to audit me, do you think he's obviously going to say, John, you're a saint. Honest to God, everything you do is fantastic. Now, if DeZoglio hires an auditor for the state, I don't think she's going to see a halo. And so what kind of audit, so the fact that we're audited by our friends we all know how Massachusetts works, and a merit to that is lovely Lowell. Why is it that we just don't let this gal do what we voted to do? We're audited by our friends every year? Not good enough.
She can choose an
So I
outside
wanna hear what you
auditor.
have to say.
She can choose an outside auditor, but
When is it gonna happen?
whenever she chooses the auditor, but she wants this other major audit of every process in the legislature, which we know is political. And then if all of a sudden we have a downtime and we have to cut budgets and hers gets cut, then she'll be saying it's retribution for that. There's separation of branches, and so to have an outside professional, not have an employee of hers, she's been very upfront about how she had to sign a non-disclosure when she was let go years ago as a legislative aide. I was with her on legislation on non-disclosures when she was in the House. She has made this a big issue, and I don't see a problem with her choosing which one of a CPA firm who's already on the list for the state, not just the House, but for the state. Let her choose them, an outside agency who's not an employee of hers, who's working for her in the auditor's office. And, if you look to her page, you don't see what agencies are being audited right now. If you want to talk about transparency, maybe she should have a page of every single audit they're working on right now, because maybe there's something going on in Norwood housing, and we don't even know they're auditing it now. But if you knew that, maybe you'd be reaching out to the auditor's office to tell them something. There's, all of a sudden they'll come up with something saying, oh, this money was wasted. We've been billed all this money for fraudulent Medicaid. Those are the things that I think we should be looking at. But it's also, when you look at the report, it's from like 2019 to 2021. Well, why don't we audit it a little sooner than that, so we find out in '24 what happened in '23, not what happened in '21?
Well, I'm just confused why, first of all, why things aren't audited, and that's what an auditor's department does. I think the public, we assume that everything is all those committees, whether it's to do the redistricting, or I assume that's one of the issues, all these different procedures. Why wouldn't the legislature, if the legislature is audited every year, I don't understand what,
Well, there's a difference between a financial audit and a procedural audit.
yeah?
And I mean, it's government, it's politics. So, I mean, I would be one of the ones who would definitely gain from this, because I'm the number one, the longest-serving woman in the House. I'm in the top 7 for longevity, but I don't have any extra stipend or extra commission.
Yeah.
Because I vote for my district. I
That's
don't go
absolutely
along with
correct, and that's,
leadership.
and so that's the ugly side of politics
Right.
as well. I
But
mean,
that's the reality of it, it's been like that for years, and if you're on the right side, you get what, I mean, I've been fortunate, the speaker and the chairman of Ways and Means has been very good to me, and I told them that I don't want a chairmanship, I want to be able to vote for my district. Doesn't help me in my
and
retirement
that's
down
why,
the line,
but that's why you're the
um,
best rep in the
But that's
state.
the thing, I mean, so do we go in and say, okay, well, how did you hire this person, Diana? How did this person get promoted? How did this, it's political. It's not about a waste of money or anything else. The money has been audited, and the money is always been cleared. You can see it on our Facebook page, not our Facebook, our website. You can actually click on those
There's
audits.
too much on your website. Got 2 questions, Linda, so if you could
Oh,
read them, that'd
oh,
be
here we
good.
go again. It sounds like accountability, not political when it comes to the audit.
But again, is it a financial audit or procedural audit?
Well,
This one?
very weedy. Is it possible the state has paid out on sexual discrimination cases?
I don't know about that. I mean, that's what got her started, is that she didn't like the non-disclosures. And what we've heard when we talked about it was that there are some women who don't want their name out there, and sometimes it's not just defending the person who may have done something wrong, but it may be protecting the victim of it as well.
Yeah.
So that's why you see when there's a rape going on, if somebody's reporting on a rape case, they will not say who the victim is. So,
Colleen, I've listened to this song and dance forever and a day, particularly with Paul George's, and how Paul George would come here. He's the guy, he's the union rep, best union rep I ever seen in my life for the Lowell teachers. And it's against the law. We can't talk about it. It's contract law. There's no law in Massachusetts that says you can't talk about all these meetings they have about teachers' raises. And I don't care how much you pay. A teacher can pay them way too much or way too little. It's up to the union. But for him to come here for years and tell me it's against the law, we can't talk about it. The union makes an agreement with the town council, be it town or city. All these negotiations are secret. We can't tell anybody. It's a contract law. And when I found out he made that deal, he never came back.
well, I think some of it, because we have the conference
make-
committee reports that, when the House and the Senate don't agree on a bill, it goes to a conference committee, which means 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate sit down and try to figure it out. When it is behind the scenes, no press, there's no grandstanding. Politicians like to grandstand, let's be honest. And it gets resolved quicker than it would be in front of the press.
Oh.
And, I've had the opportunity in the past, I served on the very first sex offender registry conference committee. And it was a good experience. It just seems over the last few, I think it goes back to Finneran and Birmingham, as Speaker and Senate President, that there's been this real difficulty between the House and the Senate on how they view things. And that's what, has things delayed quite a bit. But it's not, it's an interesting thing, but I think that if it's about accountability and the money is audited. But
It's audited by one of our friends.
it's somebody who's a licensed CPA, but now
I'm
we're
sure.
saying, John, we passed it so that Diana, the auditor, can choose from the state list. She can choose whoever she wants from the state list.
So, okay, all right.
And I got this issue. You want to read this one, please?
Oh. What's wrong with accountability in government? It's not their money, it's our money.
Right. And that's where we're saying, okay, you can have an audit of the money, but
If the auditors department, the people in the auditors department don't audit the state. You're saying they do, but if they're not the ones that are auditing it, why does she have a staff?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Rep. Gary, but the state auditor, they do more performance audits of
Right.
state agencies. Like
To-
I know they've done crippling ones of the MBTA. I don't think they're.
They do the housing authorities, they go around and make sure the laws are being,
Oh, okay.
for housing, the list and all of that is being done. That's one that they do every, I don't know if it's every 3 years, they go out to all of the different housing authorities. They
Okay.
do, well, like they were doing the mass health ones, and they found that there was a lot of Medicaid fraud going on in different.
Shocking.
Yeah, yeah. So. I mean,
Shocking, John. Did you think there was any fraud in Medicaid?
There's so much of it. When you arrest somebody and they have 4 EBT cards in their pocket, something's going on here.
I know. It's
And nobody goes, they had 4? They just don't hear that. They don't hear it.
so, when they talk about a swamp, it's very difficult to get through the weeds, you know.
Well, I mean, if we don't have IDs for people, then they can go in and pretend they're anybody.
Absolutely.
And it's funny now because one of the most liberal reps has been pushing now to get IDs for the homeless, which I sit there and go, great, let's do it. Let's get everybody an ID.
Yeah.
And
And show it when you vote.
Yeah.
I've never understood. I mean, you can't get anything from the drugstore. You can't do anything without an ID.
Right.
I don't see how that's discriminatory.
because we
it
charge
escapes me.
for them, so let's not charge for them.
But they have to have one because they wouldn't get a prescription. They wouldn't be able to cash a check. They wouldn't. There are so many things.
Right.
So they're paying for it somewhere. It isn't like they'd be buying it just to vote.
Right.
I just don't.
Well,
It-
if you
okay.
drive it to a really necessary conclusion, when you get pulled over by a cop, just say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to show you my ID. I don't have to have an ID in Massachusetts. Not going to show it to you. So go ahead, I got 2.
Is Rep. Gary minimizing the crimes of Flaherty and Finneran because they avoided jail? Isn't it great how these elected officials run cover for each other? The word salad here today is mind-boggling. Thanks for taking the question, Bart.
But I'm not minimizing, both of those gentlemen ended up, they ended up admitting and plea bargaining. I know both of those men personally, and the alleged crimes that they did had nothing to do with money. They weren't twisting arms to get money from lobbyists or anything else. And I think that there's a difference there, but I stay at the same thing. They didn't go to jail. That original post said, about the 3 of them going to jail, and
Yeah.
the first 2 did not.
Well, the conflict went way back to Morris Donahue and Tommy McGee, so I think it's probably the nature of the 2 animals
Yeah.
that they don't get along.
You got one more left.
Respectfully to Ms. Gary, that was a load of bull fertilizer explaining the audit.
Well, respectfully, I know what the difference is and what we are doing and what the bill was that we passed to allow them to have an outside auditor that she can choose. I don't know why that's not sufficient for her. And I don't know that procedurally she would be able to go in and make a decision. There's a lot of hard feelings between her and leadership, and I understand that, but honestly, there's a lot more waste in government that should be looked at. Like I said, the mass health, you come out in 2024 and say that there was all of this fraud in 2019, 2020, well, how much more has happened while you're doing the audit? Let's
Right.
get that done more often.
Right. I also in legislation, if only, my message on the bills that we vote on, the questions, nobody understands them anyway, because there's no way you can understand that you talk about word salad, and we've all seen it. It's a whole book for the
Right.
questions. It's 12 pages.
I don't think that legislating by ballot question is a good idea. I think that there's always unintended consequences. That's what happened with the marijuana bill. Yes, the majority of people wanted legal marijuana. But then it was like, okay, how do we institute this? How do we make sure it's fair to everybody? How do we make sure it's safe for everybody? And that's why we had to people say, oh, you were holding up, you weren't letting it happen. No, we had to put a process together. And because it was just thrown out.
Well, the mushroom bill is a good example of that. It was not, and if you have a doctor that will prescribe, well, I'm sure you can get them, but that wasn't the implication of the bill.
Right.
These poor people that can't get the mushrooms. That bill was so bizarre, and it goes into who can grow them in their house and everything. It gets very, very convoluted.
Well, you look at it now, and I know recently there's been a lot, and I feel so badly for the postal workers that are being held up for that key that can get into boxes, and so that people can steal checks and clean them and write out checks to themselves and all this stuff. And so when you sit there and say, okay, so we're going to let we're going to open these shops. Now they want to have delivery to those who are too sick to be able to get there. But originally it was, okay, it's going to be 2 people in every vehicle. Well, that's the way it was going to be safe, because they would be carrying a lot of product with them and money and so forth. Now they're saying, well, we can't afford to pay those 2 people, so we want less, and we want 1 person delivering. But it's the reality of what's going to happen to those people who are out delivering. Is somebody going to be waiting to grab the rest of the marijuana in the vehicle? Things you have to look at. And
Sorry, Colleen, coming up on
All right.
7 o'clock, we've got to go to break. We'll be right back.
But originally it was, okay, it's going to be 2 people in every vehicle. Well, that's the way it's going to go, because there's marijuana. Is somebody going to be waiting to grab the rest of the marijuana in the vehicle? Things you have to look at. And
Sorry, Colleen, coming up on
All right.
7 o'clock, we've got to go to break.
Welcome back, and welcome to the new people tuning on to City Life. I'm Linda Bown. I'm your host. I have Town Manager Colin Loiselle from Tyngsborough and Representative Colleen Garry from Tyngsborough and Dracut, my representative, the best in the state. So, and we've been beating her up, and but we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole thing. She answers.
She's one of the few reps that comes in and will take it
Yes.
and answer questions.
Yeah, so she votes for a district, and that's a whole, explaining that to people in itself is very difficult, because what you're voting for on legislation, for example, anything that they're going to increase a tax on some business, and we're Board of Towns.
Right.
And
Right.
so you're going to vote differently than people in Boston.
Right.
So it's an interesting issue. Colin, you've
Wait a
gotten to
minute,
nap.
before you get on to Colin, we got 2 texts left over from the first hour. So,
Once again, government is here to help you. Good grief.
second text,
Ask the people in New Orleans and California if they trust the government.
interesting points. Thank you, Linda.
Yes, yeah. So, I let you nap
Yes.
for a while, so here we go. You're right, you're absolutely right. You brought up in the break that Hillary and I were talking about the drainage on what's happening there. Is it under the road?
So, no. And I was watching it, and I almost texted you, but I figured you were busy doing the show. So,
You could have called.
I could have. My voice was a little raspy. But, so we're talking about what is now called the Ironwood Park The select board named
Oh.
it after I think we got 2,600 responses. I can't say for certain that there aren't any duplicates, but there was
That's
a
very
certain-
interesting. I like that.
Yes.
For the
yeah.
golfers.
Yes. So it's Ironwood Park. That's the parcel of land donated by Toll Brothers on the site of the former Tyngsborough Country Club. We've spent so far close to $1 million on recreation amenities. Last week, you were talking about the drainage coming from the development side of Sherburne Ave, where the 100 age-restricted units are being constructed. What was originally agreed to between Toll Brothers and the Select Board was that once they had the water issues on their side under control, as a preventative measure, they would build an independent, separate from their system, underground drainage structure on the town side, so that in the future, if there was drainage issues, it would contain the water from our side only. They took much longer than I think anybody was interested in addressing their water issues, and knock on wood, for now, it seems like they've mitigated most of them.
God bless Ed Derby.
Yes, a very patient man. So we didn't let them, at the request of the planning board, we held off on letting them install anything on our side until the planning board was satisfied that they had done the work on their side necessary to contain all of their water. There was always a very tiny culvert that ran under the road that filled what was a very small basin kind of on the town side now. They were not allowed, as a part of the planning board special permit, to use that to redirect stormwater from their side onto the town side.
Right.
So probably about a month and a half ago now, they did what was called injection grouting. So along all of their underground utility lines, they installed basically these concrete collars at a certain interval, because their theory was that the water was getting into these underground trenches and navigating to the road. That has seemed, although it's been really cold, so we'll have to wait till it warms up a little bit, that has seemed to help. And so we have given them until June of 2025 to install the structures on our side so that the planning board can say for certain that they're satisfied that the drainage works. But there's no approved plan that would allow them to redirect their water onto the town side.
Okay, because I know, I'm not sure what they have done. I know they have retention ponds, and conservation has been all over it, that were overflowing.
Yes.
And it was running, my issue and Ed's, is that it was running down Sherburne to Lawrence Brook and getting in the water there. And they were putting a lot of chemicals on it because it was so bad in the winter.
Yeah.
And again, that was running down to Lawrence Brook. So everybody was kind of we were a little concerned about some of those issues.
Yeah, and my understanding from watching the planning board meetings is that part of the problem is, in the very beginning of this project, the town's then peer review engineer, we've switched to a new company, but the last engineering review company allowed them to basically direct construction runoff into the catch basins. So the catch basins were getting clogged up with all
yeah.
the sediment. Our new engineering firm would never have approved that, and so there's been a lot of forcing them to clean out the catch basins, and I think that kind of caused, most of that surface water that we were seeing. It seems, knock on wood, like right now it's under control. I haven't gotten any complaints about freezing from the water running across the road, which 2 winters ago was really, really bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, every day we were getting pictures of it. It was
Yeah.
terrible. It was.
And Ed
terrible.
Derby was on top of that every
Oh,
single time.
he's chairman of the conservation. He was.
Oh, looking at the California fires, fire hydrants that are not working. And I'll ask a Lowell City Council when they make time to visit us soon. What kind of, how often is it, do we test all the hydrants in Tyngsborough, or they just sit there and they're painted and they look nice? If you can't speak to that process, you can't know everything.
No, I certainly can, and I'm going to bring up a subject my friend Linda loves. The town doesn't own any fire hydrants in Tyngsborough. Larger places like Lowell, obviously they have their own water district. Tyngsborough is served by the Dracut Water District and the Tyngsborough Water District. They maintain, operate, and are responsible for the fire hydrants. We have agreements with both of them that address the painting, to your point, but we're not responsible for maintaining them. Now, that said, the districts do their own testing, but as Linda knows and as her and I have talked about, they're not under any legal requirement to provide hydrants.
How about your fire department?
So what our fire department is neither. However, we bring enough water to every fire, and we assume that there is no water access anytime we respond to a structure fire. What makes it slightly more complicated is in some of our larger subdivisions, instead of fire hydrants, whether because they were constructed on an area that doesn't have municipal water, they did underground fire cisterns. Those are installed at the expense of and at the direction of the developer. We test all of those every single year, so we know if there's a cistern that isn't working. But as a practice, because there are some sections of town, and Linda and I have talked about this, that have poor fire hydrant, either the rate that we can draw the water from the hydrants isn't good, or there's just a lack of hydrants, we bring enough water, and our fire chief can talk more about this, but we have a tanker that carries an enormous amount of water, and immediately if there's a structure fire, that's deployed, and we automatically call for mutual aid from Dunstable, which has another large tanker. So we treat every, and of course, I'm not talking about wildfires, right? I'm talking about a single structure fire. But as a practice, because there is no legal requirement that districts maintain fire hydrants or install them at greater frequency, we assume that there won't be water and plan for a worst-case scenario.
I think that, and there are a lot of districts and developments and things where have fire ponds.
Yes.
And in the past, they have not been maintained. Now, and just as any runoff, you have different retention locations in your development. Now, we have a whole procedure in conservation that when the plan is developed, they have to have a maintenance plan in place. But it's very irritating on the Drake water that they just pay no attention to us. And so it's if you have a fire hydrant in Tyngsborough on Drake water, you probably don't have water there because they just don't do it, and it's hard to make them. I mean, you had a big problem this summer getting pressure.
Yeah.
And we have a pressure issue where I live, and when Tyngsborough had a pump station right off Lakeview Avenue on Audrey there. And and there were other pump stations. And when they sold all that to Drake Water, to take over, which made more sense than having a little bit of Tyngsborough water, a little bit like you have over on the other side with Chelmsford.
Yeah.
But Drake has it. You have multiple water districts. That was supposed to help. And I don't know how we hold their feet to the fire to have them just implement that a little better in that area.
The Select Board and the Drake Water Commission, our relationship has certainly improved. We've talked about this.
Yes.
One of the things that we've recently come to, I think, a final agreement on, the interesting part, and I've learned the history since, but the actual customer for the water district by the special legislation is the town. We have had, and then for years didn't have, a contract that allowed the district to sell directly to Tyngsborough residents. By the letter of the special act that established their ability to sell in Tyngsborough, technically they're supposed to sell to the town, and then we're supposed to sell to residents. We lack the infrastructure, the staff power, they own it all. In the special act, it gave quite deference to the town in terms of direct appeals to different state agencies if the rate increases were too high, since Tyngsborough residents can't vote. It outlined a complaint procedure. Over time, the contracts that the town entered into sort of watered that down in recognition of the fact that all of these complaint procedures were kind of relying on voluntary cooperation by both sides. I mean, I have no authority over the district, the select board has no authority. So I think where we've landed is an agreement that says, look, we're going to go by the letter of the special legislation that allowed you to serve to Tyngsborough. You can sell directly to residents, but we're still going to maintain the ability to appeal to the Department of Public Utilities if the rate increases are unfair. Because if you live in Drake and there's a dramatic rate increase, you can go to the annual meeting and you can vote against it, or you can vote in new commissioners. Tyngsborough residents don't have that right
That's
now.
correct.
The special act does prevent the district from charging Drake at one rate and Tyngsborough another. So, if Drake saw that dramatic increase, we were seeing it as well. You can't be targeted. But Tyngsborough residents didn't have the ability to appeal that. We are now going back to the letter of the special act, which gives a direct appeal to the Department of Public Utilities. Admittedly, it'll be tough to convince the Department of Utilities that a 5% increase to Drake residents is okay, but the 5% increase to Tyngsborough is not. So whether or not an appeal to them would be specific, but it kind of drives home the fact that there has to be some other entity that can step in and interfere when there are these types of disputes.
And there are people in Drake who still can't vote in the Drake water supply. So there are
Yes.
area towns that are getting the water from them,
Yeah.
but they can't vote. So it's a major I mean, it's an old act but it just tells me what a great town administrator, town manager we have.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've just thrown out different things at him, and he just answered it like that. Like, oh my gosh.
I hate to,
It's a
town.
text from Mark Kratman out in Tewksbury.
Oh, good morning, John and me. Great show. Hope all is well with everyone. All is good in Oz. I'm glad to hear about that. I heard that your gas is lower than everywhere else, and of course it would be in Oz.
Gasoline is cheaper in Tewksbury for sure.
Thank you, Mark. I
Next
just
one.
love what they're doing, but in the
Next
fact.
one, Linda.
Huh? Oh. I like Rep. Gary. She's a very nice person, and I appreciate her effort. But when these politicians enter the State House, it feels like they leave the people behind and work for lobbyists. But
Thank you, Bart. I appreciate the nice thought, and it is difficult. I mean, one of the first things I learned is that if you're not around the district, they'll tell you that you're spending too much time in Boston, and if somebody sees you out at lunch somewhere, they'll say, why aren't you in Boston? So you can't make everybody happy, but there are people who, yeah, they make their own way in the legislature. But going back to Tommy McGee, I remember one time I had an opportunity to drive him to Methuen. His son was a member of my class going in, and we had his 40th birthday party out in Saugus. And Tommy came over to me and said, will you do me a favor? Are you going back home? My dad needs a ride to Methuen. And I thought, wow, here's the guy that they changed the way government worked because
I
he was
love
too
Tommy McGee.
strong-armed. And I said to him, Mr. McGee, of all the things that you ever did, and they had a building at the Lynn Community College named after him. They had a recovery center out in Weston, Mass. Named after him. I said, of all the things you ever did, what was the best thing you can look back on your career and do? And he said, Colleen, there was a young girl from my district, and she needed a transplant, and Blue Cross Blue Shield wouldn't do it because it was experimental. He goes, and I pulled them into my office, and I told them they'd never get anything on Beacon Hill again if they didn't take care of this little girl. And he said, years later, this young woman came up to me and said, Mr. Speaker, you don't know me, but I'm Jamie Fisk, and I'm alive today because of you. So you can look at all of that, and he probably would be prosecuted right now if he did that,
Yeah.
brought the lobbyists in and threatened them. But here's this man who was so well known as being a tough guy and having his way on everything, and looking back at his career, that was the one thing he wanted to remember. And I think I just spoke to some kids on Saturday, I think it was, about government and about serving, and they were asking, what's the best thing you've ever done, and I said, just being able to help lead people and finding Kathy Lucia when she was
Yeah,
missing.
I remember that.
That wasn't technically my job, but I was able to use my connections and get people out there to look, and we found her.
Yeah.
Which was a miracle. I think the vast majority of people in the legislature are there for the right reason. There are some that just want to keep going up the ranks and get the next higher office and all that stuff, but the vast majority of people are good people, and they want to help people.
I think that, and in fairness to you, I have watched you over the years, and I watch how you vote, and you vote your district. Now, again, and to that point, you're not going to get some of the things we need in our district because you don't play the game.
Right.
But you can't have it both ways, and I think as voters, we want it both ways. We want it all. Don't talk to the lobbyists, don't talk to the other legislators, but on the other hand, when we want something, you better talk to them. It is how it is.
It is to find balance because, and I know Colin knows that Tyngsborough, we always have issues about the electricity and, so to have a relationship with the people from National Grid to say, hey, can you check on this situation? Can you check on that? You learn how to work with other entities and get things done. But as you say, I'm not going to be in leadership at any point in the near future because I vote my district.
Yeah.
And, it's always been, whether you're pro-life on the abortion issue, whether you're capital punishment, all of those that were seen as moral choices. That was something that was never asked of by leadership, that you change your position on any of those. And I've just noticed since the abortion issue has become so political nationwide, I've seen some of the pro-life legislators switch at this point, whether it was switched to be with leadership or just switched to be with the more popular. It's a funny thing. I haven't really had the chance to talk to my colleagues and say, why did you switch? And,
Yeah.
you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to, again, the drink it water. I've lived with that all my life in the water district pretty much. And nobody has done what you've done. Nobody has actually set up a relationship and looked at the old agreements and where that was and where we are today, and to bring it back. I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. If nothing else, the fact that, and, you know, maybe he can give some of the people in Drake a clue how he did that. But and that's just one thing, you know, but you do. And that, again, that's being a leader and a facilitator, and that's what you're supposed to do.
So I want to follow that up with, for those who are watching the Route 110 realigning
Oh,
and
yeah.
so forth, there was there was a landslide last year, was it last year or the year before? But right by Haverhill Street, there's always this big puddle. And they're saying, why are we going to repave and do all that if there's a flooding issue, and aren't we getting that done? So the owner of the property adjacent to where they needed to work granted them permission to go on. They did go on, and they found a bigger issue with the land and so forth. But I just got notified yesterday that they are going forward. They have to now get a permission again to go back on and get permission from the Conservation Commission in Drake to extend the work area. But it looks like the line under the road is okay. I guess they would put the cameras in and they were seeing that that's fine. But there's some other work that they have to do, but it will be done before they redo that 110. So,
Yeah, good old
Linda,
conservation.
you want to take this one?
Home run, Colleen. You can't please everyone all the time, but you take the questions. Imagine if the head guy in the city came on and answered questions. True. Answered the question. Yeah, I always thank everybody that comes in, because, you know, you never know what we're going to ask you. I hit you right off at the beginning. It's, so I'm very happy, because I like Colin and I like Colleen. I've been around, I've seen a lot of different leaders, and both of you represent the district.
thank you.
And
Thank you.
I just love what you're doing. You know, and interestingly, I was against establishing a town manager. And, you know, I'm old school, the town meeting and the selectmen. I'm so happy. Yeah, you know, because you can do something now. The way your hands were tied before, and and so we had to deal with the selectmen, whether you liked the selectmen or didn't like the selectmen, or where they were going. Now, we have someone.
Professional, a professional.
At least I pretend to be one on TV. And I think the thing, too, is, you know, whether it was the Town Manager Act or the DPW Act, there's always a natural and healthy level of skepticism when you're proposing change. And sometimes it takes the change being implemented for people to see, okay, I wasn't the town manager when the act was passed, but I was here when it was discussed at length, both when the charter first failed in 2018 and then when the Town Manager Act passed. And people had very valid concerns. Was this going to become, you know, somebody from the outside running our town? Were we going to lose control? And I think, you know, people seeing that, okay, we did this and we still have the same level of control. Town meeting still sets the budget. Town meeting still decides the zoning. Town meeting still makes the big decisions. The select board still make, you know, a lot of the long-term day-to-day decisions. I think that once people start to see it, and local government had, and still does in some places, a history of being very closed down, and that doesn't benefit anybody. I'd much rather talk to residents who are complaining about an aspect of the budget than just hide, because then it becomes a much bigger issue. And,
Yeah. You're right.
I'm going to ask Manager Loiselle a couple of questions.
all right. Hot seat.
You're a professional. In Lowell, we love to hire a politician to run the town. And we'll talk about him another day. But what's your background in education? Why did you deserve this job? And page 2, how often do people try to pluck you out of Tyngsborough to go to work for other towns? So
I'll start with the second one.
What's your background?
I'll start with the background. You know, in undergrad, I studied politics, and I was more interested in politics. At some point, you know, I was a dork. I was involved in student government while I was in college, and the aspect of politics, God bless Colleen, and we've talked about all the things that she has to do with the State House, didn't interest me as much because I liked working when I interned at the State House in the different branches, but on the local level, you see the impact much more directly. You're able to be with people, and I took a few classes in the public administration program. I have my MPA from Suffolk,
MPA is what?
Master in Public Administration.
Thank you.
And I just really enjoyed managing programs, delivering services for residents, and I didn't want to I don't have the temperament or the patience to do politics like Rep. Gary does. I'd much rather just implement the decision of voters, whether it's at town meeting or the select board. So I've been in local government, since 2017. I started as an intern in Tyngsborough. I have no interest to do politics. I'm completely apolitical. I'll work with you no matter what your political opinions are, because I have it easy. I've got town meeting that says, here, spend this money. They set the priorities, whether it's through zoning or the home rule petitions that we file. And then I've got 5 elected select boards who they can play the politics, and they direct the long-term vision of the town, and all I have to do is manage our staff, make sure we spend taxpayers' money responsibly, and carry out in the best interest of everybody in Tyngsborough. And to me, that's much more enjoyable than, I don't want to have to kiss the ring, if you will. I don't have the patience for that kind of stuff. Your second question, do people try to pluck me out of Tyngsborough? There are a lot of retirements in this field, and so there are a lot of jobs opening. But I think people know that I'm very happy in Tyngsborough and not looking to go anywhere else.
Thank you for your answer.
And he will grow in Tyngsborough and be will hopefully.
Linda, Mark Kratman sends this one for you. It's a long one.
Rep. Colin Garry fights every day for the people in her district. She puts people first, and she can sleep well at night, that she is always doing the right thing for the people she serves. If we had more people like her at the State House, the Commonwealth would be a much better place. She puts others before herself, and we are lucky to have her.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
right.
Thank you.
That's from
yeah.
Tewksbury's Mark Kratman.
Yes.
And Tewksbury's losing Jane Wellman is retiring from Tewksbury
Oh.
too. I saw that yesterday, and I wish her well.
Yeah.
She serves the community well.
Pretty select woman.
Yeah.
Well, they do well in Tewksbury. And I always say, but watch out. We've got Colin now, and Tyngsborough is on the move, I do believe.
Yes, I believe he's done a fantastic job, and there's lots more. I mean, for him to be able to juggle all of the things on a daily basis out there, and to be able to get things done, and I always know when it's something for Tyngsborough. I just call Colin, hey, what's going on, and vice versa. I mean, it's just a fantastic thing to be able to work with someone who isn't trying to make a name for themselves and trying to make somebody the bad guy or whatever. We work as a team, and everything for the community.
It is a funny
town.
town.
Team at Town Hall. I just want to say, we have a lot of really good things happening. I can't take credit for most of it. And I think you and Hillary talked about some of the main characters last week, but we've got everybody in Town Hall is in it for the right reasons. They're people who are connected to the community, whether they live in town or not. And I think that's the biggest piece. People are happy living in town, happy working in town. They enjoy their jobs. I think we've got a great environment. People see the successes that we're having, and so it makes it easier for people to come to work, and then they're delivering a much better product to our residents.
Well, it's open to a policy,
Yeah.
and if they can reach you, and I've seen the downside of some of the things, but you're right. And Eric Gitchio often is here, and he'll say, you've got to be a good leader and a good administrator and work with the people, because you have to pat them on the back when they should be patted on the back and make them accountable. And I think that we see more people not being accountable, or departments not being accountable, and a lot of that goes back to the leadership and what you expect of them. And
they love Colin.
Oh, I know.
He was one of them working alongside them, and then he left, and then there was the opening, and they wanted him back. And
Absolutely.
we were very fortunate to be able to get him back. But I've seen it, and honestly, he was talking about me working the Festival of Trees. There were times we were working together, and he's not afraid of getting out and doing whatever needs to be done. And that's a a good leader.
And we have a lot happening in Tyngsborough now. You mentioned the marijuana, and
Yeah.
that, boy, everybody, I'd get calls from people saying, what is going on in Middlesex Road because of the traffic? But they had a cop there, and they had, and,
At their expense.
yep.
Yeah.
So that went very well, and we're having one on the other side of the street.
I think that will. I think the one on the other side will help with some of the congestion because it gives people a second option. You know, I know that everyone thinks I'm 12, but I'm young and I'm old enough to remember when the mall
That
was
was
really
my
busy.
word saying you were 12.
Yes,
yeah.
she called me at 2 when you had stepped out.
Wow, 2.
Yeah. But I am old enough to remember when you went to the mall for Christmas shopping, and I know that it's inconvenient when Nature's Remedy has a lot of traffic, but there was a period of time where that whole stretch of Middlesex Road in Christmas time was backed up because people were
Right.
going to the mall. And I think, you know, Nature's Remedy has been cooperative. Anytime we have to assign a police detail, whether they want it or not, they're paying for it completely. And again, you know, 75% of the excise tax revenue we get from that goes into our roads. So,
When I was on the board, the mall opened.
okay.
The first, and there was an agreement, because when it was all the planning and everything, we were supposed to get more. We were supposed to, the restaurants were going to be in Tyngsborough because the mass food tax was lower, et cetera. We didn't get anything but the parking lot.
Yeah.
Now, and we've lived with that.
Yep.
And it's not been pretty with the insurance rates going up. It's been a bit of a downside. What is going to happen with the casino?
Yeah.
Are we getting anything?
Nothing. This is something that we, you know, I'm optimistic. Our police department and the Nashville Police Department have worked our biggest concern from the beginning was the fact that almost their entire parking lot is in Tyngsborough, and that's where the crime and casinos
Yes,
happen. The inside
yes.
is a fortified fortress.
Yes.
It's in the parking lot you have to be careful about. We talked earlier about our budget, we run a very lean department. We don't have a lot of excess. You know, they've got the mall has its own security system, which they've beefed up. The casino is hiring their own security. They've been cooperative. The city of Nashville has been cooperative. But Tyngsborough will get $0 in any form of revenue from the casino.
Nothing towards the police department or anything. That's
Nothing.
originally, we were supposed to get a,
If we have to
Who's that?
assign a police detail, they will have to pay for it.
right.
But there's if they were opening in Massachusetts through the Gaming Commission, there would be all kinds of
Correct.
post-community fees like we get on the marijuana side. What I'm hopeful for is that folks who are, you know, the casino will have food options. What I'm hopeful is that maybe on their way out of the casino back to Lowell or South, they'll stop at the 440 and maybe buy a meal at Tavern in the Square or Epigram, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll get some meals tax revenue.
Will they, let me just ask you on the police details, and when are they opening? Soon?
They had said they'd be open by now. I think that it's going to be the first week in February.
Because it's a huge casino.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and I'm not against it at all, but I am disappointed that they didn't have the foresight to they know the parking lot is in Tyngsborough, that it could actually put a black eye to them if it's not maintained.
Oh, absolutely. And we've made that abundantly clear to them. I mean, you know, our police chief has met with them probably a dozen of times now. I've spoken to their management. They know that there's a lot riding on this. And Nashville is very cooperative with us. Nashville has a lot of control over them. And so if we get to a point where our police are overwhelmed with calls there, Nashville will be able to support us and put some sort of enforcement in place.
What about the state? Because that's an interesting location, because you can't get there from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
You have to come down to the center of Tyngsborough, or to Kendall Road, and go back on the highway, or come up Kendall Road to get there. Now, way back when I was on, and that was in the 80s, there was talk about doing something, putting a roundabout so that, or some kind of exit, so that you could get off coming from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Where is that with the state? Is anybody looking at that?
We work very closely with the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. They support everybody in our region. We have talked about that being a priority for the town, because it would not just, I mean, this was before the casino was a concept, but it would benefit a lot of the businesses on the northern end of Middlesex Road in Tyngsborough. MassDOT, we spoke to them, and perhaps I'll have to lobby Rep. Gary and Senator Kennedy to help us here. The state MassDOT told us they want nothing to do with it.
Well, New Hampshire hasn't ever, any of the proposals I have seen over the years, they were gonna put one little lane towards Tyngsborough. I mean, we were not going, and they wanted to take land by eminent domain. And Danforth Road, that nobody knows how to get there from here.
Yes, you gotta go out of town to get back in town.
That's right. Those houses would be taken, I believe, on a big exit.
I think that we had put together a very early proposal that avoided, I know, that avoided taking anybody's property. It would require support from the Federal Department of Transportation as well. It's a much larger project. It's something that NIMCOG has committed to helping us study. Simultaneously, NIMCOG and Rep. Custer from New Hampshire, although I think her term is wrapping up, I don't even know that she's still in there, reinvigorated the idea of rail from Lowell to the Pheasant Lane Mall and
yes.
adding that Nashua stop. So certainly if you did that, you'd want to have some increased highway access so folks could get off, park at the train station, hypothetically.
You know, that could be good, and then maybe we'd get something for.
Yeah.
My concern on that is that they don't seem to talk to anybody in Tyngsborough, and there's not going to be a stop in Tyngsborough. They just want to go through it.
Yeah.
And then you've got that housing that's right along the
Yeah.
river on that side, and how fast are they would they be going, and so forth. It's a real safety issue. So I actually filed legislation that said you can't do it unless you talk to the communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
but-
you.
Yeah.
Imagine that. How novel would
I
that be?
got two texts that I'm gonna read. The first one to Colleen. Should we bring up the Rourke Bridge? Laugh out loud. John says it's never gonna get redone. Colleen, right, the last week's Lowell Sun, I think it was the Sunday Sun, suggested, they got the state reps all smiling. I would like to ask those state reps, if we don't have construction on that bridge in 2025, will you resign? They're, oh yeah, it's coming in April. What are the
I'm not part of the Lowell delegation,
I
so.
understand. I understand, but
Yeah, no.
this malarkey.
It supposedly is
far,
gonna be done. Laurie Trahan-
I'm almost done. Okay, in Lowell. Okay, this Rourke Bridge has been there since before most of the audience was born. It's a temporary bridge. It came up from Connecticut. Since then, okay, we have built a new courthouse. Since then, Tyngsborough Bridge has been replaced completely. And the Lowell Sun wants us to think, we're gonna get the new Rourke Bridge this time. Over to you, Colin, what are your thoughts?
I believe we are going to get it.
When?
I think Laurie Trahan, Congresswoman, has really done a fantastic job getting us the
She
money.
always does a fantastic, but when are we gonna have the bridge?
I don't know exactly what the
That's my
timing is
answer.
at this point. I haven't been involved in that.
That's my answer.
It used to be that it was the Greater Lowell delegation did a lot of things together, and it really has gotten to the point
You
that
had a great
the Lowell-
delegation
we
to
had
work
great
with
del-
back then.
Yeah, I mean, nobody thought Route 3 was going to be expanded. Now we need to expand it again, from what I understand. And we even had Jim Maselli from Tewksbury, Wilmington was working on it, and Bob Hargraves, and, all of us were working together on it. There are going to be some transportation. The governor just filed another transportation bond. So that's something that we need to, I'll be talking to you this week then about what needs to be done with the,
So the collective we
With the-
once enjoyed for the delegation that represented this part of the state, it's gone?
well, I think that it's, and partly I think it's the Lowell Sun's fault because they don't include the rest of us. They used to be able to call us all together.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually seemed like Middlesex Community College and UMass Lowell have done the same thing. That they look at it as a Lowell thing, when really it's a Greater Lowell. So I guess I'm actually the dean of the Greater Lowell delegation now, so I guess I'll have to put things
Gotta
together.
flex your muscles a little bit and
Yeah,
say, hey, what
yeah.
about us? Now, are we going to
Back to Tyngsborough. Linda, can you read this one?
They're not real casinos in New Hampshire. The legislators' charity events, they are in Connecticut as well. The rules are slightly different than a real casino. And I know, because I used to go down to the casino with Beverly and Louise, and we used to always say it's for the children. Going down there. So, I think everybody thinks but I've been to one of the casinos in New Hampshire, and it's pleasant.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
pleasant.
make no mistake, they make money. They do have to donate a lot to charity, but they make money. I mean, they're not
If only they will,
they're not doing this for free.
no, if only we can get them to know where they are and
But the good
look
thing
out
is
the
Colin
windows on
and
the
the Board
parking
of
lot.
Selectmen have really worked to get that plaza across from
Oh,
where the
amazing.
Tavern in the Square, and you know, we were able to get the additional liquor licenses back and special legislation. It was one of the last things that was done this session.
I am so happy. I feel bad that Lowell doesn't have the developer that we have there, that did down in Littleton. It's the same
Yep,
developer.
yep.
And anybody that's seen that right off 495, it is great.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about what's happening
Right.
up there. And it is slow like everything else up here. You know, everybody's having a hard time with construction. But they've been wonderful to work with on conservation. I know that every time there's an issue, they come right in, and in fact, usually they're on it before we have to contact them. So I don't know if we'll ever have the hotel that every so often comes up along Route 3, in that back part that goes all along from,
It would be
used to be
nice.
Abdallah's property.
I forgot to mention this. Don't forget about the UMass Lowell Bridge. It was done before the
Right.
North Bridge. Good point. Thanks for
Yes, yeah, so maybe Marty will build one for us.
Well, the interesting thing is, you know, the courthouse, as we were talking about the courthouse, the garage there, it got built because Sal bought it and
Yeah.
bought the land and
Yeah.
built that. And if it was the state doing it, we'd still be waiting for it.
Well, and speaking of bridges, we got the Tyngsborough Bridge done before.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colleen.
We got the temporary bridge up and down.
Yes.
I remember so many times, is that going to be a temporary bridge like the Rourke temporary bridge? Nope, it's
Yeah.
going to be down.
Yeah. It's actually now people are looking at it saying, maybe we shouldn't have taken it down.
Yeah.
And done
Kevin
something with it.
Sullivan was transportation secretary at the time. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
And Steve Panchatakis, you know, as a senator, was awesome to work with. And I remember going out on the barge with him, and he'd ask our vests on and all that. But really amazing.
Oh, they did it, and unfortunately, the Rourke Bridge is in as bad condition as the Tyngsborough Bridge was. That used to be, I used to put my windows down every time I went over that bridge, because I could look out my window and see the water. That was not a good.
Very unnerving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a suspension bridge anyway, so it's, you know, it sort of moves.
And then if you were walking across, you get that cage around you.
This is the cartoon of the proposed
Beautiful.
new Rourke.
Wow.
It's a cartoon.
I have no doubt, John, that it's going to look just like that, if not better.
It's the trees that I.
Yeah. Okay.
And all of, you know, I always say this on conservation, because you take all those pretty little trees and they do all the landscaping on the plans, it never looks like that.
Right.
It's
Right.
just at the end of the day, because who's
Well,
going to
talk about trees. I mean, if we talk about climate and all of that, I can't even think about how bad LA is, you know?
Oh.
I mean, the devastation out there, and the firefighters working so hard, and people just losing everything. I mean, I've lost
yeah.
my law office to a fire years ago.
Yeah.
It is devastating, but that was just a business, and never mind if it was your home and everything that was in it.
Whole communities.
Yeah.
It's
The
just-
schools, how do you rebuild all of that at
Well,
once?
it was like an inferno.
Well, Tyngsborough's got tons and tons of forestry.
Yes.
Colin, what does your fire? Have you had an opportunity to sit down with your fire chief? How does he or she? Is it a guy or a gal?
A gentleman, Wes
Okay.
Russell.
So how does he feel about the safety of the forestry in Tyngsborough, especially the state forest?
Yeah, no, I think we feel very strongly. We have, like I said, our firefighters are top of the line. We have great mutual aid relationships.
We
with-
all have the best. We all got the. We have the
Yes,
best. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. But again, we do a lot of public awareness. We do a lot of public outreach. It's something I'm sure that he worries about, particularly, you know, earlier this winter, end of the fall, you had places like Middleton and Saugus dealing with those massive brush fires. We're prepared for the worst, and like I said, every time we respond to any call, we treat it like it's the most serious call in the world, so we're prepared.
Well, when you get all the calls, you talk about the brush fires and everything on Route 3. I know
Yeah.
that becomes an issue, that they have to go out along, you know,
Yeah.
on Route
And
3.
now, Wes, as the chief started the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT team, we had that in Drake when there was more money around. And so I said, well, can I be part of yours now? Because Drake, it doesn't really have it anymore. But that's where I learned how to do a search and rescue. It was by learning that on the community emergency response. So it trained some of the town folks to do it. And that's what they used to be. It used to be a volunteer fire department.
Yeah.
And they were phenomenal then.
Right.
I remember when I first got elected, I went out to something, and all the firefighters had gone in, well, it was a firefighter restaurant, and they were all in
Right.
there, and there'd been a missing person, and they were all out looking. They're all volunteer.
We're
Yeah.
moving on to the silly part of the show now. Look at all the open space for the homeless tents. So speaking of homeless, Colin, you got any homeless in Tyngsborough?
I'm sure we do.
Well, what about that tent under the off-road 3 there? What is that?
That was not a homeless person. That was, if you're not familiar, if you took Route 3 north, you got on the Kendall Road on-ramp, right as you actually merged into traffic, there used to be a large political sign,
Yes.
and the tent was a veteran. As far as I understand, I didn't have the pleasure of meeting him, but I've heard, it was a veteran who, during the election season, lived in the tent and guarded the sign because it had been vandalized so much.
Yes,
It's
it
gone
had.
now.
Yeah.
The sign is gone, and that veteran is gone.
The tent is there. I saw it the other day.
It's gone now. Yesterday it was
Oh.
gone.
Oh,
It is
okay.
gone now. But yeah, so it wasn't a homeless person. He
Okay.
was, I guess, hired by the landowner to protect the sign
Interesting.
because it had been vandalized so much.
That's a.
But I'm sure
glad
we
to
do
know that.
have homeless people. Our police department has a great outreach program, and so does our Board of Health, and we've helped a few people. It's not as pronounced as you see, obviously, in Lowell, because, and I think we talked about this on a previous show, Tyngsborough doesn't have the level of social services that a city has. So if you're camping out in Tyngsborough, it's kind of like your stop on the way to a city like Lowell or Nashua where you can get a wider range of services.
Not a lot of places to sell your EBT card.
No.
It's just not there. But a lot for that whole coming up Middlesex Road. It's a lot of changes going on there, and that brewery, it's constantly.
They're doing a great job.
Oh, it is amazing.
Yeah.
It's
A great family spot. It's not what, and that's kind of how breweries have evolved, but there's always families there. It's not like it's some loud party place. There's things for everybody. They've got great food. They've got great beer. And they've been a great community partner. They participate in the Festival of Trees and the block party. They're always looking to get their name out there and involved. And that's 99.9% of the businesses in Tyngsborough because Tyngsborough has that small town kind of sense of connected.
And that's what I heard from people coming in from other towns to see the Festival of Trees, that it was the best, that just the location of it and the quaintness of the buildings and the whole community being involved. They said it was like a Hallmark movie.
yes. So
um,
watch out, Mark. We're going to replace you as Oz.
And I'm sure Tewksbury has these issues too. Every town's got to rethink after New Orleans. Some renegade, somebody taking their truck and just running over your citizens.
Yeah.
Moving forward, we have to all think about how do we protect that from happening in our
It
festivities.
I don't even want to think about what.
Well, let me just say, and certainly I'm not playing Monday morning quarterback here, and I don't know enough about their planning in New Orleans. But you look at a town like Tyngsborough, our population is just shy of 13,000. Every summer we host the block party, which generates, up to 10,000 visitors. These are the conversations about concrete ballers, the conversations about parking dump trucks. We've been having these conversations and doing it for 5 or 6 years, and that's in this tiny town of Tyngsborough. Just this summer, we started putting concrete jersey barriers along the corner. If you're in our town center, the bridge is here, the First Parish is here. Well, the First Parish lawn is where we do our beer tent. That's where all the alcohol is, and in prior years, we just relied on that orange kind of silk fencing to kind of just keep the alcohol in. And during our emergency preparedness meeting ahead of this event, we thought, well, if somebody's coming over the bridge and loses control of their vehicle, or in a worst case scenario, they're just going to plow right onto the First Parish lawn, and you've got 200 people packed in a tight space. So we started putting concrete jersey barriers along the curb to prevent that. So these are things that really everybody has been thinking about, and you're right, it's unfortunate, but in all of our large programming, Festival of Trees, the block party, those are things that are at the forefront.
And you mentioned that. I mean, when the fire chief in New Orleans says, "Oh, I didn't know we had that those protections." I mean, even as you say, even in a small town like Tyngsborough, and it goes back to leadership.
And I want to say that we had a great police chief in Chief Howe, who has retired, and now Sean is doing a fantastic, Sean Woods. So we're lucky. We have a great team out in Tyngsborough.
Well, I'm very happy with, as I say, the management's going to, and I talked to different department heads, and of course we have. Now, tell me about the DPW. How's that working out
Very
now
well.
with the new? It's a
working
new
very well.
organization, so
It is an
department.
organization. There's no new staff, so the DPW didn't come with a big dollar increase, but for forever we had a sewer department that operated on its own, a highway department that operated its own, facilities folks that operated kind of on their own but were in the highway. There was no coordination.
And
There was-
cemetery.
and the cemetery, and our tree warden, which was elected. They all did their own thing. They duplicated efforts because there was nobody at the top coordinating all those efforts. And the DPW Act, Linda was at that town meeting, was certainly widely discussed. I think there was some skepticism from the sewer commission that was worried that it would be a way to take the sewer enterprise funds. And now our DPW superintendent attends every sewer commission meeting. They're working great together. They're doing a lot more. We're able to supplement areas where the sewer commission was having to hire vendors at prevailing wage to come in and dig a trench for them. We're now having highway division employees do it because it's all under the same umbrella. So we're seeing much larger increases in efficiency. There's more staff power because we've combined it. And we did it all for, I wouldn't even say it was a $10,000 increase in the budget.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. As I say, a lot of things happening in Tyngsborough that, we're growing. And I think that, and I always compliment Tewksbury because you see some towns that grow and they don't do well. It's all dysfunctional. So we're at that stage right now. And to have young leadership that is spearheading that and coordinating and listening to the people. And I'll tell you, Colin makes reference to me because I've had some issues. The people have come to me with issues, and he sees every single one of them, and he talks to them, and he comes back, and he it is when we started talking today, and we said, "Oh, by the way," and he has all the answers
Right.
on that particular issue. So he is involved, and he obviously likes what he's doing. And what do you have for staff? Now, I know Jackie is at the desk, right?
Jackie Schnackertz is our executive assistant.
Just drag that mic towards you, Colin.
Served on the select board many, many years ago. She's fantastic. Our assistant town manager is Kat Foster. She was a budget officer in Lexington, so she left a much larger budget to come to Tyngsborough. That's just a sampling. All of our department heads are top of the line. And you talk about growth. One of the things that Tyngsborough does very well, and it's a credit to land use boards like the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, is we do smart growth. We don't just build plazas for revenue. We build or permit projects that fit with the character of the town. All of our boards do a great job protecting the character, whether it's the conservation aspect of it or planning. We're just very strategic about it. There's reckless growth, which is I think what you were referencing when you say that some communities grow too fast and then they fail. And then there's our more measured approach, which is a slower approach, but the end result, like the 440 Plaza, is something that fits with the character and doesn't diminish.
Took a long time, but it is actually coming to life. And it will take time, but I
But
love it.
Tyngsborough was one of the first communities to accept the MBTA Act, Housing Act, to do it proactively and to plan it proactively.
Where we want it.
Right.
And let me just say, I know that Rep. Gary knows this. Tyngsborough didn't comply with the MBTA Act because it thought it was the greatest law. And I think that message was clear at town meeting. Tyngsborough relies heavily on state grants. We're
Yeah.
currently in the middle of a $2 million Mass Works project. We would have had to return some of the money we spent if we didn't comply. And we did. It wasn't me that developed the zoning. It wasn't our staff that did it. It was the zoning review committee, which is residents representing the planning board, the select board, the zoning board of appeals, and residents at large. So we did. We created zoning districts that minimized the impact on Tyngsborough and did our best to manage a state law that I think I know the Supreme Court recently upheld it, but a lot of people see as kind of one size fits all, which really doesn't work.
So I guess we're
I'm going to interrupt you here. I got somebody in the audience that wants to know what we're having for lunch today at the Lowell Senior
love
Center. So you
Meat
guys can collect your
lasagna?
thoughts over there because we're running out of time to see what we want to talk about before you're gone. Today is the 15th of January. You people, the only rule is you got to be over 60 years old. You can live in Tyngsborough, you can live in Tewksbury, we don't care where you live. The Lowell Senior Center serves lunch 7 days a week. They're closed Monday because it's a holiday, but they close lunch 7 days a week. $2. Go in there and if you don't have $2, we'll let you eat for free. So today is meat lasagna. Moving on to the text. We are surrounded by water everywhere in Massachusetts. Around 25% of our land in the state is water. California could save the same amount of water from their mountains. They choose to let the water run out to sea. Interesting comment. Back to you, Linda.
Manager, but going back to what we did, and we were one of the first to approve that, please remind the governor of that. And
I
so
will.
when we need a grant for maybe the Sturban House.
Tyngsborough and it got Drake who Drake did not vote for it, and now I just got the word that she did the emergency order, and they're going to be fixing it the right way, but it's still not a great law. I still
Yes.
don't think it should just be 117 or whatever our communities. If it's a statewide issue, it's a statewide issue, and Western Mass has a lot more land that they could be building
Right.
these on.
Right.
Maybe we need to increase, roadways and train, but, at some point, there's only so much. I mean, like the community of Drake, just like Tyngsborough has invested in the community, and we've invested in APR for some of our agricultural products for the farms and open space to keep that. And now all of a sudden you're saying, okay, well, we've saved all this land, but now you want us to build more housing. And,
Right.
Unfortunately, Drake didn't do the zoning that allowed for one affordable house in each development, that kind of thing to boost our affordability. But so it's not easy. That's one of the toughest. And I joke with people that we're the live free or die people who don't realize we're on this side of the border.
Yeah.
We're not going to be told anything by anybody, and so that's a difficult part of it. But Tyngsborough is one of the best communities for getting grants. I mean, these guys know how to write them and get them.
And make no mistake, I start every grant application. Right now, I've been working with Rep. Gary and Senator Kennedy. We have $600,000 in the economic development bond bill that I hope and pray the governor releases. And every letter starts with, as one of the few communities that's adopted MBTA communities. So we are owning it, and we are using it to our advantage.
Good.
Well,
Good.
that's how Nibby got saved, the beaver out in Chelmsford.
Yeah.
Because they were having the press conference on the 30-some-odd communities who did accept it. And I went down to it, and I grabbed the governor on the side, and I said, we got to talk about beaver. And her sister had called her that morning about the beaver story, and by the end of that week, Nibby was saved, and incredible work by Jane Newhouse out at Newhouse Wildlife Rescue. If you want to support a good project, she doesn't get paid for this.
No.
It's all grants. I mean, it's all donations, and she's been able to save all these animals with that. If you put out a rat poison or whatever, you see those bait boxes all over the place at restaurants. Well, if the rat eats it and they die, and then a fox comes across and eats that rat, now they've got poisoning. And
Yeah.
it's incredible what it's doing to the wildlife. So,
Right.
So Jane is one who goes out anytime, day or night, and saves these animals, and it's amazing.
Excellent. There are some amazing people up there. I know we're all very upset, and it's horrible to watch California, but could we do a positive spin on now you could, and you talk about good development,
Yeah.
that you could go in there and I don't have a lot of confidence in the administration or the leadership in California, unfortunately, but it's an opportunity to redevelop really efficiently
Well, I wonder now about what's the toxicity level
Oh,
in
God.
those, and how much they're going to be buying land for. I feel people are talking about the celebrities who have lost homes, but they all
Yeah.
have people working for them in one
the
way.
trailer
to come
parks
in.
and everybody else that lived
Yeah,
there.
the maids and the housekeepers and all of those. It's really tragic. But just think about the contamination,
It's a waste, it's,
the
yeah.
rivers and the,
Well,
but the wind.
somebody
that's
really
the
annoyed
biggest-
God in California, I think.
The interesting
It's
thing,
like an
I've been
inferno.
watching that Fire City on Paramount, and it's a real thing. They
It
have
is.
prisoners who learn how to be firefighters and go out and do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's, but the schools, everything, the whole community's devastated.
Yeah.
And I just don't even know where you go with that, because it was so poorly run that they couldn't even get insurance.
Right.
And so, I
Well,
don't,
besides that, the earthquakes, the winds, it's tough.
yeah, it's for
I
such
think
a
about this
beautiful
on the
state.
Cape or like places on the North Shore where you watch every summer 1 or 2 houses fall into the ocean,
Yeah.
and then the next year they've built one that's just 20 feet behind where that one was. And I'm
Yeah.
like, at what point do we say, maybe we need to go a little more inland?
Well, they did that same thing in Florida and Carolinas. We had a house on Ocracoke, and Bown got sick, so I had to sell it. It was right on the water. It was a beautiful location. I sold it, and 2 years later, Isabel came up the sound, took it out, took them all out.
I can,
So,
I can
but
read,
somebody else rebuilt, so strange.
I'm going to read these 2 texts. The first, I can't get them up on screen, sorry. Thank you, Colleen and Colin, for coming in today. Thank you for taking the tough questions. Again, I appreciate your service. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. That's from Bart. And then I got one more that says, and then look at what happened to the wildlife in California. And
Well-
Colin, before you skedaddle, I want to ask, municipality-wise, Los Angeles lost 10,000, maybe 20,000 houses. What's going to happen to their real estate taxes? How is Los Angeles going to survive without 10,000 taxes coming in?
And compound that with the expenses that they've incurred fighting the fires. It's devastating. I'm not an expert on California taxes. I know they're probably higher than even in Massachusetts. But if that happened in Tyngsborough, that's a great point. We would be down and out.
Understood. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, I guess we're almost done.
You got 60 seconds,
Well,
tops.
one of the positive things is everybody who's going out to California try to help. And that chef that has the kitchens, the
Oh,
world.
the World Kitchen, yeah.
Yes, incredible work.
Yeah.
that
Well,
he does.
firefighter-wise, they've grown to 14,000 firefighters. That's how many people, they came from Canada, they came
Oh,
from all over
sure,
the country.
yeah.
14,000 firefighters are
Yeah.
on the scene in California today.
Well, it's like 9/11. And that's one of the wonderful things about the United States. Everybody does step up,
Yeah.
and they will, join together. You talked about politics earlier, and I have to. The last time I saw you
Seconds.
was just before the election, and we were supporting different candidates, and
yep.
you sent me a text and said congratulations.
Yeah.
So you should be able to
Yeah.
do that.
Yes.
It shouldn't
Absolutely.
be personal. So thank you, everybody, for watching us. I thank both of them that were here
Thank
before
you.
me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Have a good
tomorrow.
day.
Thanks for
Stay
watching.
warm.